Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we're joined by Rajna Swaminathan, who we spoke to in January 2024. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Really looking forward to it.
Likewise.
You have degrees in French, anthropology, and music, and you wrote your dissertation on diasporic queer resonances. To paraphrase a bit, that's a fascinatingly rich background. Can you tell us more about your overall path and the different strands in it and how you wandered along it and found your way?
Sure. So I ended up majoring in anthropology and French, partly because I couldn't major in music. So I went to the University of Maryland, and I, was really trying to get involved with the music department there. I went to multiple professors, and it just unfortunately was a kind of conservatory system where they weren't quite set up to have somebody like me with a different musical background come in and be able to take courses. They had a very kind of rigid framework. That isn't to say I didn't try. I really did try. I was like jazz studies, anything percussion minor. Anyway, it was a little bit difficult to get that to work. But I had kind of stumbled upon anthropology as a field because I was interested. See, both my parents were scientists, and my mom worked for NASA. My dad also worked as a physicist and ended up doing a lot of projects for NASA. And so I was initially thinking, okay, maybe I'll do that. I'll be a physicist, and I'll do music, and I can balance the two. But I just had seen how difficult that actually was in practice from my parents. So I was trying to find a field that would be maybe more complementary to pursuing music. And anthropology came up as a way to kind of think about culture, and thinking across different cultures. And French was mostly because I had been taking French in high school and wanted to continue, and was sort of kept going long enough to get a second degree. Uh, but anthropology was actually, it ended up being a kind of a perfect field because I found a mentor at the University of Maryland, Laurie Frederick, who is an anthropologist and does performance studies, which is sort of this field at the intersection of theater and anthropology. And there's a lot of thought about what performance means, in a very broad, abstract way, but also thinking interculturally about performance. So it gave me a language to start thinking academically about how to write about my own journey with music, which at that point, I had been primarily working on the mridangam in South Indian classical music contexts, and in dance contexts. So it was around that time that I was entering college that I really wanted to open up and explore other kinds of music, and think about how that would feed into a kind of compositional voice.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about questions of identity and form across cultures, it was a nice thing to be studying, and to develop a language to articulate that in my undergrad. And I actually, I wasn't set on pursuing an academic path. After I graduated, I really just wanted to move to New York. At that point, I had met some folks from the jazz scene, and I was just excited to be a full-time musician, and to just kind of play around and see who I could collaborate with in New York, mostly to learn and to kind of absorb different musical styles and rhythmic approaches, to expand my own knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the day that I was graduating from undergrad that my mentor Vijay Iyer called me, and he was like, well, there might be this program at Harvard that I might be getting involved with. And he was like, I can't tell you too much about it, but would you be interested? And at that time, I remember saying, no, I'm not going back to school. I'm ready to move to New York, and I'm gonna, rough it out as a freelance musician. But, a couple years later, I think after living in New York for a while and finding that, well, first of all, there's not a lot of people writing music that involves the mridangam, and I needed to sort of, I essentially created my own band and project to start exploring what this instrument could do in a kind of intercultural ensemble context. Um, After spending about 3 years in New York, I'd say, I was starting to get to this point, which I think maybe a lot of people do in New York, where just there's so many things going on.
Yeah.
You find it can be confusing. It can be like, okay, well, I'm taking on all these gigs just to kind of pay my bills, and at what point do I focus and really find what, what is my approach and what is important to me, and sort of develop a philosophy about it. So of course I reached out to Vijay again. I was like, are you still running that thing? Are you still interested in having a graduate student? Because I think I'd like to apply, because I need a break from New York, and I need some time to think and really figure out aesthetically, culturally, where I'm going with this. And so that's kind of how I found my way to Harvard and to doing that program, which is called Creative Practice and Critical Inquiry. So that's sort of my background, academically at least. And I was at Harvard for 6 years, at first student in that program, as it turned out, and was able to shape it, and also just learn a lot from what it meant to bring that kind of a program into that kind of a department where things had been done a particular way for a long time. And it was at times frustrating, but also at times just nice to see the openness that the department kind of brought to having performers and improvisers come in and really make the place quite vibrant. So, yeah.
And so here you are.
So here I am, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's interesting. I think it does happen, especially in New York, that it's overwhelming in a beautiful, wonderful way. And
Mhm.
that at a certain point, you kind of either plant your feet or have to do something to figure out how you're going to fit into that flow.
Yeah, and I did continue going back and forth to New York when I was living in Cambridge. So it just allowed me to be a bit more focused in my approach, and obviously just logistically speaking, you have to kind of plan the trips there and like, prioritize certain things. So that helped me kind of just figure out, okay, well, this is the kind of work I would like to do, and this is what I'm gravitating towards.
Yeah.
This is what I'm curious about. So
Yeah, no, that's true. And in very traditional programs, what you're talking about might have fallen under ethnomusicology in some kind of larger umbrella. But that's a very traditional landing place for it. And not all departments or music departments even have an ethno branch. So,
sure, and it's still quite like an academic field, in that, in a lot of
yes.
cases, performance is discouraged, composition is discouraged. You're so focused on doing field work and
Yeah.
really pursuing an academic career that I didn't want that. I kind of knew that. I didn't want to be stuck in that path. And this program offered a kind of new opportunity where I could draw on the expertise of a field like ethnomusicology, but still channel all that knowledge into creative work.
Yeah,
And which is good.
almost like he was thinking of you when the opportunity came, even though that's looking backwards with the rearview mirror, but still,
Yeah.
it's great that that happened. Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Rajna Swaminathan, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes. with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.